Joining me now are Shai Franklin, a Middle East analyst, a partner in Gotham Government Relations, and a former executive of the World Jewish Congress. Also with me is Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief for the Jewish News Service and a contributor to the National Review magazine. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Shai, I want to start with you. So we're on the eve of the Israeli elections. Tensions remain high on the Gaza border. Will the concern there help drive voters to the polls, you think?
Not necessarily. The tension is unfortunately not unusual. What is a little unusual is that less than a week ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu was considering postponing the elections in order to do some kind of major attack on Gaza. I don't know how serious he was about it, but it does kind of raise the stakes in some people's minds. A lot of the attention now is really on Iran and Saudi Arabia, and next week Netanyahu will be at the UN General Assembly in New York, regardless of the results of the election. So there are a lot of different issues.
And Jonathan Tobin, what about this report that Netanyahu was going to launch an offensive in Gaza, but was convinced not to, and it was really just days before the election, so close?
Well, again, we don't know the exact facts about what was planned or what wasn't planned, how serious it was. What we do know is that the conflict, security issues remain Netanyahu's ace card. He is trusted. He's seen as the most credible of the party leaders on security issues. He's managed to navigate over these last 10 years a very difficult challenge from both Iran and Hezbollah on one front, Gaza, Hamas on the other, without being trigger happy, which I guess is the allegation that he might have been a week ago. Or was considering it, and yet staying strong. And that's why he's retained, despite the baggage of 10 years in office, which creates all sorts of problems for any politician. He's still seen as the odds-on favorite. The polls show most Israelis still trust him to be prime minister, however the voting goes. So that's, security is still his main argument for staying in office.
Shai, this is, as you know, the second round of voting in Israel. Could the results this time be the same as the first round, inconclusive? And if so, what happens then?
They could be inconclusive. Victor Lieberman's party could win 9 or 10 seats, and neither a right-wing coalition nor a left-wing coalition is expected to get more than 60 seats on its own. And I would just say that in terms of security, Netanyahu, I think the real issue here today and tomorrow is not so much security, but it's a trust in Netanyahu personally. Benny Gantz, I think, would be just as strong on security. Many Israelis may think that as well, but I think a lot of Israelis on the right feel personal loyalty to Netanyahu. But if most Israelis trusted Netanyahu, then he would be getting more than a coalition of just 60 seats out of the 120.
And Jonathan, talk about Netanyahu's looming criminal charges, the corruption charges against him. Many think that if he's reelected, he'll push to make himself immune from prosecution, and that's become a real issue in this election.
I think that is one of the key issues here. I don't think there's any doubt that if there is a Likud right-wing religious coalition that is formed out of this election, it will vote to give him immunity while in office, which is, I might add, actually routine in most democracies, but obviously is a point of contention because whatever you think about these allegations, and I think there's a good argument to be made that really none of them are serious enough to merit his being evicted from office, maybe even politically motivated, they still are part of the baggage he carries. But I think going into the election, we have to remember, I think there's a few key points here. One, how accurate are the polls? Israeli polls are notoriously less accurate than even American polls, which we've learned to distrust. Two, can he get to 61? And if he gets to 61, will it be with the help of the Kahanist right-wing, very extreme right-wing Otzma party, which would give him real problems and really create problems with the United States? Two, if there is another stalemate, will Victor Lieberman and his party really stick to their guns and only insist on a coalition with Blue and White and Likud, which is aimed at getting rid of Netanyahu?
Sure.
And finally, if that happens, will the Likud party members in the Knesset stay loyal to Netanyahu. Some of them would like to go out on their own, like Gilad Erdan, and be prime minister. But so far, Netanyahu has very tight control of his party, and that will tell the tale of what happens after the results are counted.
And Shai, I mean, with Netanyahu being so popular and, you know, such a long-standing prime minister, are you surprised that he's in such a dogfight and that this race, by all indications, is going to be so close?
No, look, we see this in the United States too. On the Republican side, President Trump is just as popular as he was a few years ago when he was running for president. Netanyahu is very popular on the right. And part of the problem for the left in Israel is that much of the left wing is part of this center-left coalition, which includes former Likudniks. So their main case seems to be, we're against Netanyahu. There's very little in terms of security, in terms of even annexation. They claim that they had the idea first. So it's not clear that they represent a real alternative to Netanyahu, except if you don't like Netanyahu. So I think he's a survivor. Whether it's on the legal side or the political side, I definitely would not count him out. I would be not at all surprised if he continues to be prime minister. One thing to consider is that 2 years from now, we may have a new president of the United States. And if it's a Democrat, there could be some friction there.
Absolutely. All right. Shai Franklin, Jonathan Tobin, thanks to you both.